Week 16, it's almost here. It's a bloodbath of weather and injuries and much more. Some might even call it letdown week because you make it this far. You draft teams all year. You advance to the playoffs, and then you advanced one more time in week 15. Now you're up against a bunch of super teams. Maybe you're relying upon some people in some sketchy weather spots. It can be a letdown, but if your team rises above, you make that week 17 final. It was all worth it. The whole draft cycle was worth it. All the tilt, all the sweat, everything was worth it. And we're going to figure out if either Rob or I can get a team into week 17 or any of you guys can get a team into week 17 right now.
So I'm going to take blame for us being a few minutes late, as I was talking to Lord Reeves, and you would think that we were talking about football, but I think Lord Reeves and myself might start a Steven Seagal podcast at some point where we just review Steven Seagal movies. So that's what was going on.
I have a lot of other passions as well. Steven Seagal, and mine are weird. I definitely have some weird ones. Steven Seagal movies is probably a step further than even some of the dumb shit that I'm interested in. I will say, it's kind of similar to, you have a ghost show, which I find fascinating. Mm-hmm. Mine is not the same, but in I guess kind of a similar ballpark. Like, I don't know what is specifically like wrong inside my head, but like any true crime documentary that comes out on any streaming service or anything like that, like I watch it. I watch all of them. I'm obsessed with every single possible true crime documentary, like even the one. So, my wife and I, obviously we like to watch some shows and stuff like that together. I'm so impatient, and I've watched like everything that exists. So when a new one comes out, there's one she's interested in. She's like, will you wait this time for me? And then it's like, 2 days later, and she's like, well, you want to watch that? I'm like, spoiler, I'm done. She's like, you watched 8 episodes in 2 days? I'm like, yeah, you fall asleep before I do. What do you want me to do?
It happens, right? So let me ask you this real quick, then we'll start talking about best ball. Would you be interested in a movie where Steven Seagal fights Mike Tyson?
Of course, yes, absolutely. So, did Reeves post this on Twitter? You can tell the story, but I saw something about this on Twitter?
He shared it because there is a movie where Steven Seagal fights Mike Tyson. However, they're never in the same room. It's Steven Seagal fighting a stunt double. It's Mike Tyson fighting against stunt double, or it's 2 stunt doubles fighting each other. They never met. And there's a whole action scene of them fighting each other.
A movie based around them fighting each other, and they've literally never even met. That's
Correct.
Incredible. And how long ago is this? Like
recent.
It's recent. Okay, I was gonna say, because if it's from their like both of their primes, you would be like, that's really crazy. Nowadays, it's like, you and I've never even fucking met in person, so it's not that surprising, for people to like not meet and do, like, you and I aren't doing goddamn action, it's not a karate show.
Not
we're
yet.
Not doing, we're not, it's like, it depends on how week 16 goes. We're going to turn this into a true crime / karate podcast afterwards. But
speaking of terrible, week 16.
Oh, dude, I call it for many different reasons. I was looking for something like to kind of, what do we call this week 16? Like, oh, it's the semifinals, whatever. That's boring. It definitely feels like letdown week to me. Like, because obviously we spend all year, if you're in the sicko community, like all of us are, drafting teams, whatever. And then you get here and like you have a bunch of teams. And so like the math actually says, if you got 20 teams or whatever, you're probably, you should get one through. But like, that's not really how it works.
Right.
It doesn't, in practice, just because that math says it that way isn't really how it works. And then we get all these bombs dropped on us from injuries. The weather is horrible everywhere. It's just like this gigantic letdown that you feel like is leading up to all your teams getting wiped out.
I'm sorry, I got them riled up. They're reenacting the Steven Seagal and Mike Tyson fight.
Say, we can't lead in with Steven Seagal intros anymore.
Shout out to Johnny Footballs in the chat in Stoughton, Mass. That's like 2 towns away from me. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's not that bad here yet for weather, but it's going to be bad everywhere. apparently,
Yeah.
especially starting tonight over at that New York Jets Jacksonville game. How affected are you by this game? Because this ends up being one of the most pivotal games for me this week somehow.
Yeah.
And I'm not thrilled about it, but the big dog team that we've been tracking, we have Jalen Hurts, who is out. We have Ryan Tannehill, who's out. We are left with Zach Wilson in a monsoon against the bad defense. But I've talked myself into it. Because we shared how unique the team is.
Yep.
If some of these players go off, I'm in good shape. All I need Zach Wilson to do in my head is get me 12 to 15 tonight. Gets me 12 to 15 and I'm happy, right? Like he gets me 12 to 15 points, then I am not super stressing it. I think that I can make it through. And maybe I'm just making delusions of grandeur in my head. It's Christmas. I got the Christmas lights going here. I got some red. Maybe I should be taking that red as like code red.
Yeah.
We're in real bad shape tonight, but what do you have that you're really stressing about for tonight's game to start?
Yeah. So I actually feel like, knock on wood, I'm okay in terms of this game. I have my fair bit of Zay, but he was one of those guys we've talked about, such a late pick that you're like, of course it would be better if I could like maybe get a good game out of him, but like I've basically just written off Zay Jones for this week, and I feel still okay about all my teams that have Zay.
Yeah,
I actually didn't get as much Lawrence here as I thought I would, because I drafted a good clip of him, and obviously he's been awesome, particularly last week.
Yeah,
and I didn't get as much of him through. So I actually it's kind of just like, would you rather have Fields in bad weather against the Bills or Lawrence in bad weather against the Jets? Like, I don't know what's the difference. So I guess I'm just prolonging my tilt when Justin Fields scores like 12 or something, but I have a little more Fields than Lawrence, like in that same range, and more Tua actually than Lawrence. So I feel kind of like, hashtag blessed on the Lawrence front. But what I'm kind of calling the team I'm most heavily invested in, similar to what you are with your big dog, my DraftKings 333 single entry team. It was a late round quarterback team that has Lawrence, Davis Mills, and Carson Wentz. So it's obviously just a Lawrence Davis Mills team. And in that tournament specifically, kind of similar to the big dog, you have a really high probability of advancing, and I don't have Jalen Hurts, and I don't really have much else that's injured. I lost Rashad Bateman early in the year, but it's a really good team, except for quarterback. And Lawrence has been carrying it, and so that's been great up until now. So he's like not a worry on basically any of my teams except the one I'm like rooting for the most. And then probably the second most, the team I've been tracking the second closest, which I tweeted about this and you joked with the shanty, but I really want to get this like maybe even more so than, and I don't want to say that because the 333 is like, a guaranteed $5,000 or something like that. Well, basically make me profitable this year.
Yeah.
But a BBM team that has Travis Etienne as my RB1. And like, I'm not expecting anything tonight from really any of the Jags or really anyone in this game. Mm-hmm. But if I will be cheering very loudly if Etienne can, have even like 15, man, like, dude, if he gets 15 points, I'll be elated. 90 total yards and a touchdown would be unreal, because I really, really want to get him into week 17, where, in case people don't know, he plays the Texans. So he's my guy. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those types of players later, but it's such a funny, best ball's so funny because Lawrence I thought would be a really important player for me. And then just by happen chance, he's really not important for me across like my 18 teams that I have, but then he's on probably my most important team. And then his running back is on, my other most important team. It's funny how these like situations play themselves out on the actual teams that advance.
Yeah, and I was looking through the chat while you were bringing up some of those variables, and it seems like other people are sweating the game tonight heavily. Like they have a lot of Kirk, they have a lot of ETN. They have all these pieces from this game. It's a big sweat. And just to answer Johnny Football's question, I live in Bridgewater. Doxed myself. It's fine. It's no big deal. Yeah. So this game, it's so crazy that this is the game that we kick off week 16 with, where it's massive. Jags Jets. Like, if you had told people in the beginning of the season, like, are we going to be focused on a Jags Jets game?
It's huge. It's a huge game, which is crazy. I mean, it really is crazy. Like, but both sides have multiple guys. The Jags a little bit more so, but Garrett Wilson is one of the best wide receiver picks in all of fantasy too. It's just an absolutely insanely massive game, and it's a monsoon and in the middle of Snowmageddon. It's wild.
Yeah, and you bring up the shanty. I was thinking as you brought it up, I didn't double check to see if it happened, but I know I got like a Trey Lance team or two through. I know I got an ETN team through or two. But imagine if I were to win one of these tournaments with a Trey Lance and Travis Etienne team. It would be. I don't know what. Am I supposed to forfeit the money at that point, or
yes, 100%.
Okay,
that's what that was. There was 2 clauses in BBM. I'm pretty sure was if you openly disparage certain players and you win with them, you have to hand over the money to charity. And also, if you draft Deshaun Watson and you win with Deshaun Watson on your team, you have to hand over the money to charity. It was basically like those are the 2 camps.
That's fair. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. So this game starts off the weather week, which, we usually say like weather is not a huge deal unless there's wind, but it's everywhere this week. Like, what game is not affected? Like, Eagles Dallas is like one of the few. I don't know. I think every other game feels like we're dealing with something. Like, I'm going down to, like, I have to drive to Rhode Island to place bets, and that's what I'm doing after this show. And I'm like, do I just wait till tomorrow, or is the monsoon gonna be worse? Like, when do I do that? And these guys have to go play football in it. And yeah, we have like totals of like 12.
I can barely fit all the bad weather games on the same screen on Raw for anyone that doesn't know. I kind of went through this in yesterday's show, like just a smidge, but the weather is way too important. There's no way to get through any show about this week without talking about the weather. If you haven't, my go-to, obviously both Rob and I are biased with working for Roto Grinders, but Kevin Roth was literally a meteorologist. So like, I know there's a lot of guys out. I'm not saying anyone on Twitter or what, I don't care. Do your thing. There's probably lots of smart people that understand weather and all that out there. But like, who am I to tell a meteorologist, that you're wrong? And he puts really insightful analysis around each game and color codes them in terms of, obviously red being, oh shit. And that's what tonight is. It's red. It's at the top here. I know I'll zoom in a little bit, but it's as bad as it gets, essentially red, right? You can't get worse. And we're starting off with cold, heavy rain, heavy wind. Like, it's real bad. It's real bad.
Well, that's why I'm kind of hoping that Zach Wilson does decent tonight, because he does have a pair of legs on him. He can move, and I'm hoping for some decent rushing attempts in this weather for him, that he breaks off. I'm not looking for him to have a Justin Fields game. I don't expect 150 rushing yards out of him or anything like that. But 40, 50 rushing yards tonight from Zach Wilson where he breaks one or something, that's, again, probably talking myself into things. But I do think it's a possibility. And we might be looking at a lot of like screen passes and stuff like that. Maybe someone houses something. The Jacksonville defense isn't that good. The more I talk about it, Zach Wilson's probably going to get 30 tonight.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. It's Steven Seagal intro and talking yourself into 30 Zach Wilson points. I couldn't convince you to play him at 5K on DraftKings last week on the Sunday morning Roto Grinder show. And now in the worst weather game that motherfucker has ever played in his life, you're like, oh yeah, here we go. 30 ball.
I tweeted this morning, I am the biggest Zach Wilson stan there is in the world for one day only. One day early.
Good point by Pengs. You said Zach Wilson does have a pair of legs, and Pengs says, I'm curious about the QBs who don't have a pair of legs.
Matt Ryan, he comes to mind. Like Tom Brady.
Literally, no, Brady's pogo. He's a pogo stick back there, and
exactly. So, yeah, I'm talking myself into it, but on the flip side is like
one thing I wanted to, just while I'm thinking about it, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, was this is definitely not the same type of weather that we saw in that game. But remember, the Bills, literally a week, it was not even a week ago. Bills, Dolphins, right? Everybody's like, oh my God, there's going to be 6 foot of snow. Are they going to cancel the game? Right. They're showing pictures of the field that's covered. By the time the game, now, again, this is like rain and wind. It's different. Yeah. But by the time that game started, it's particularly in DFS, if you faded them, my best team, again, my best team had a Tua stack. I used Kirk Cousins' score instead of Tua, but I used both Tyreek and Waddle's scores last week. And if we would have done the show right before that game, I would have been like, fuck me, dude. It's over. I'm screwed. My second and third round picks or whatever are dust because this game, the weather's too bad. But that was more snow, and snows definitely can be very fluky. This is heavy rain and 40-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. It's a little bit different, but shit changes, man. You never know. And one thing that I do always try to say, it's not that I played some high level of football or whatever, but I played college football and I played defensive back. And when it gets really bad, the only thing that is actually like a hindrance for the offense is the quarterback getting the ball to the wide receiver and then obviously him catching it. But it's way harder to cover guys.
Yeah.
Because you don't so think about if you had to, me and you got to go outside and go run around, right? You know where you're going and I just have to follow you and I don't know where I'm going and it's slick as hell. Well, you get to prepare yourself for your moves. I'm trying to adjust on the fly and it's slick, right? It's like I'm running on ice and I got shoes and you got ice skates on. It's like it's not really super fair for the defense. However, the problem is obviously getting them the ball. But so I don't think we should write off fantasy production in this game. The real problem is that the Jets defense is also awesome. So you just start stacking these things up for the Jags and it's really bad. If this was a bad defense like the Jags, you can pipe dream about Zach Wilson because the Jags defense is so bad. But on the Jets side, it's God damn, they have the top 5 defense or whatever in the NFL and all these other factors for a really chalky Jags team, dude. Zay is the highest owned player in the second round. Lawrence is one of the highest owned quarterbacks. Kirk's got a high advance rate. Ingram's got a high advance rate. It's crazy.
Yeah, and we're also looking at Jalen Hurts teams who were happy that their second quarterback was Trevor Lawrence, right? I'm sure I have a team like that or two. And now you're like, damn, man. So that insurance policy is out the window. The thing I was going to bring up, I have a few thoughts, but the first thing I want to bring up is maybe it's not as big a deal though, based on the fact that we might not get a quarterback that hits 30 this week because of the weather conditions, or maybe only one, or maybe you're not trying to dodge that the way you would on a September day where the weather's perfect or something. This is all galaxy brain wish casting stuff, but it's a viable thing where we might have the lowest scoring slate of the past 3 years this week, potentially based on weather. We have, what is that New Orleans Saints Cleveland game? It's under 30 or so. It's and then you add the weather and then you add everybody's out and you get these types of games and you might not be having to dodge as much. So the Trevor Lawrence 12, 13, 14 point game, you might just be combating a Patrick Mahomes 25, a Josh Allen 25. And it's it sucks that you're negative 13 if you start at the position, but when you got all these other spots to cover that 13 points, it's definitely a thing that you can do based on how your roster is constructed. Right. So
100%. And I was going to say, you're wish casting, but isn't that we always talk about we'll give our advice and stuff, but I'm not an expert in this. No one has solved this game. We're going through this shit just like everybody else is. This is what people are sitting at home. They're like, fuck, I got Trevor Lawrence is my only quarterback. I'm like, guess what? So do I, Rob. So do I. We're so how do we, do you just sit and sulk and be like, well, fuck it, that team's done? No, I think it's reasonable to think about all the different scenarios. And I think that what you mentioned with quarterback scoring is realistic. So somebody was mentioning what about the indoor games? Yeah, there are some, but so I'll scroll down to all games here, right? So obviously
while you're looking at that, Dak's got Philly in the dome. Yep. Dak hasn't thrown for 300 yards this year, and no one has Gardner Minshew in these tournaments.
Correct. The Titans get the Texans. you have Malik Willis, who, you know, I know that this game is like reasonable weather, but like Malik Willis is going to throw like 8 passes. You know what I mean? And the other side is Davis Mills. So this is a weather game. You're not really, I mean, it's cold as hell, but like, you're not really concerned about it, but it's really just Derrick Henry. It's a Derrick Henry game. It's like, is Derrick Henry going to score 40 or 20? You know, right. That's what you're trying to find out in that game. Vikings. So like, I mean, I have Kirk Cousins on one of my best teams. I have Justin Jefferson, just like everybody. So like, you're excited about the Vikings, but like Kirk Cousins needed to fall behind by 33 to even come close to matching the ceiling of the Josh Allens, and they still outscored him. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts outscored Kirk Cousins, and he threw every down in the second half and came back. The greatest Kirk fans around here.
Right,
but it's
so
like
Kirk Cousins sets him off.
Seagal and Kirk Cousins. That's what you found. Kirk Cousins apparently is a big Coles guy. Did you see his tweet about he's what's the difference between LL Bean and Eddie Bauer and whatever? It's like, Jesus, dude, be more of like a rich white guy. Like what are you from wherever, the boonies or wherever he's from? Iowa. He went to Iowa, right? Or something like that. Anyway.
God.
Far off track. That's a very miserable existence that this millionaire is living.
He is the whitest man in America.
So white. So Mahomes is one.
Yep.
But also Mahomes, Jesus Christ. But Mahomes is like the guy who can obviously always smash, but it's like very different from Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, right? Mahomes got to go throw 4 or 5 touchdowns, which he can do, of course, but it's just different how Mahomes gets there. Like, are you?
I got you. So yeah, I got you. So you got Mahomes, who can only get it with 4 or 5 touchdowns, and you get 2 PI calls on like the 1 or the 2 yard line. Pacheco runs 2 in, and now we're looking at the 20-point Mahomes games. We got Cincinnati at New England. It's looking like the weather is going to be halfway decent here. Patriots defense has not been good against like the nut quarterbacks, so Cincinnati could smash against New England, but it's a 41.5 for a reason. I don't know if they're going to completely go nuclear. Like Burrow again has to do the Mahomes thing where he's got to, I mean, he's ran for a few here and there, but he's still got to mostly do the Mahomes thing. Yeah. So 20 is viable for him. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to score 3 or 4 points, but if they're scoring 20, 22, 25, and you got one of these other guys that are in a bad spot, they get 12, 11, 11, 12, 13, there's makeup spots on these.
The Burrow one's is probably the perfect example, right? Like he can go have a good game. He probably will have a good game. He has a good game most weeks. Yeah. They're healthy, but
they're on fire.
But a good game is, like you said, 25 or upper 20s. And it's like, yeah, of course, I don't want to have my quarterback score 13 and someone else to score 25. Not rooting for that, but you're not dead. It's not over. You're dead when the guy goes and gets 40, right? When Jalen Hurts goes and gets 40 and you have 12, it's over. Like you can't make that up, especially in half-point PPR elsewhere. And so that's just really the point. Like, look at all these good weather games. You tell me what quarterback's burying you. I guess Mahomes, right? Lamar's out. There isn't even nobody drafted either of these quarterbacks. Half the quarterbacks in the good games, nobody even drafted. They're not even on teams. So like who? It's Dak, Mahomes, Burrow, but like Tua, I guess. But like, is Tua really good? Like Tua is like Burrow. Like his good game is 25. Is he really going to bury you? And then Kyler's out, right? Brady's not going to bury you. Herbert hasn't buried you all year. Show me what quarterback's going to bury you. I don't see it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that 40-point upside is real limited. It's Mahomes.
I think it's Mahomes.
Who's Allen got again this week?
The Bears, but that's also weather too.
It's
like
that weather's pretty bad too. Yeah. So you're looking at
he could, but I mean, it's Josh Allen. He could, but still, it's a downgrade to Josh Allen. And I mentioned this in some DFS content today that like I kind of Devin Singletary seems like kind of a little. You could call it James Cook too if you wanted to call it James Cook. Seems like kind of a little sneaky because, like, dude, if they don't come out and just ransack the Bears, with like the Bears don't even have ESB anymore. Claypool's doubtful, Mooney's out, now ESB's out. It's N'Keal Harry and Dante Pettis and Velus Jones and shit out there with Justin Fields and a bunch of losers. Like Josh's elbow's a little dinged up. If they said, hey, Like, you can throw, of course, but let's maybe not put you in harm's way so much like we did last week and let's just go win this game, 28-17 or whatever. I don't think that's unreasonable either.
Yeah. While we're talking about quarterbacks, I, like you, often have these thoughts throughout the day because all I'm thinking about is best ball because I'm a psychopath and Steven Seagal. And I was looking at some of my teams, like my Josh Allen teams, my Mahomes teams, and my Jalen Hurts teams. And we know that the range that I was looking for my backup was at minimum, I wanted like Trevor Lawrence, but you can't always get that. So I have some of these teams where like the second quarterback for the Josh Allen team I'm excited about is Matt Ryan. Now, take away the fact that he's not starting this week. Let's pretend he was starting. Who cares? It's Matt Ryan. He's not doing anything. So the thought process I was having is like, man, if you had these Jalen Hurts teams, and this might just be reactionary, but if you had these Jalen Hurts teams for the year, and this is only for elite quarterbacks, I keep caveating everything, but your Hurts,
he was not hurt, and you have to do an elite quarterback.
Yeah. But your elite quarterbacks that are like your 40-point scorers, right? The guys that like when you drafted them, they gave you their score every week, except for like their bye week, which was Hurts, Mahomes, Josh Allen. And we're taking a second quarterback that does nothing for you all year. Does it almost make more sense that if you drafted Josh Allen just to draft his backup, or if you drafted Jalen Hurts just to take Gardner Minshew, because you're already only getting the Eagles quarterback score anyways? We've determined that the bye week really doesn't matter so much. Like, it's going to cost you a minuscule amount of times if you're going to advance or not.
Points. Yeah. Call it 12 to 15 points.
Right. So wouldn't it be better in case, I mean, it's easy to see with the Jalen Hurts situation right now, but how much happier would you be if you drafted Gardner Minshew on your team in the 18th round on your Jalen Hurts team, and you're not using that second quarterback anyway, so if something happens, you still have the Eagles quarterback.
At least have the good quarterback. Yeah, right? I'm sitting here with fucking Davis Mills on teams.
Yeah.
It's like, what is he helping me other than, again, those probably not even 12 points that he gave me on that bye week? And Jalen Hurts smashed so much. Again, part of it, like you said, we have to put caveats. You have to do a little bit of use the results that's the point of the conversation, because now we're trying to say, what if this happens again, right? And I kind of think it's an interesting, I certainly haven't thought about it. That wasn't where I thought you were going with that. But it's reasonable when you have a team with a quality backup like Gardner Minshew, right? There were smart people in this offseason talking about handcuffing running backs for kind of really outlier situations. I know Herzig was doing it some, right? You lose Dalvin for week 15. So all the Dalvin teams get knocked out, but you have Madison. You advance because Madison has a big game. Dalvin comes back, whatever, and you have a super low owned smash running back. That's a fairly difficult thing to find happen, right? It's a pipe dream to win these tournaments anyway. But that's really wish casting something to happen. But the quarterback thing is fascinating because quarterback points are still replaceable as long as you have a requisite level of talent. We saw that, like, look at Mike White. Mike White probably has more talent than Zach Wilson, but like Mike White just steps off the bench. Boom. Actually, he elevated the offense. He's scoring fantasy points, right? Gardner Minshew is probably the best example of that. Minshew, Huntley.
I don't even know who Mahomes' backup is, but like,
I don't either.
Wouldn't you rather go into week 17 with like a Mahomes and his backup situation than like going into it with like that? I'm talking about the lower level too. Like, I'm not talking about like, if you could get, a Tua or something like that. But yeah, wouldn't you rather have Chad Henne on your team with your Mahomes in case something happened, rather than Carson Wentz, who was dust, Mitch Trubisky was dust, like all these Davis Mills dust, Zach Wilson dust until an injury? Like, we were grasping at straws in these last few rounds for these quarterbacks, and it's like, hell, if you had Jared Goff, but you had Josh Allen or something, you barely ever used Jared Goff's scores.
And he was good.
And he was good. Yeah. So like, I'm just like looking at the Jalen Hurts thing, and it just feels so obvious that this is something we should have been doing. And it sucks that it took the Jalen Hurts situation to happen, but like, man, these elite guys, and it's just for the elite guys. It's not when you start getting into these guys that you're bouncing around. If you're taking Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff and
I mean,
Ryan
don't take John Wolford behind Matthew Stafford or whatever. But it's like you said, those elite guys got you there. At least give yourself a chance. Like, are you probably going to win with Gardner Minshew Best Ball Mania 3 if Hurts misses the next 2 weeks? Probably not. Do you have a chance? Yes. That's all you can ask. And look, this is someone staring down the barrel at Davis Mills teams. So I can assure you, do I feel like I have a chance? No. Like, it's over. You know what I mean? Like, it's Matt Ryan, Davis Mills, even like Goff. I was talking to somebody, texting with somebody earlier today that was like, I think Goff is going to be my savior. I was like, well, I hate to tell you, I hate to break the news to you, but like Goff has two actually usable games all week, like usable in terms of like winning a tournament, right? Yeah. So like, yeah, sure. Next week against the Bears, if you can get there, maybe you can wish cast about it, but those guys just can't do it. So you might as well, because then you get the correlation too. Like, what if Gardner Minshew throws 5 touchdowns on Sunday and you just dropped him into your AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard, whatever stack? Like, I do think you would prefer that to Davis Mills, whatever.
And it's 18th round. It's like you're looking at or DK is 20th round because they don't go 20th. Drafted, right? So like, why not? We've talked about that 18th round just not always producing anything, and you're not doing it every time, right? You're not being like, well, I'm taking 40% Gardner Minshew. It's you're taking him on Jalen Hurts teams when you get locked out of a level that you're comfortable with for your second quarterback. And I think I got to think about it more and just really like dive into it. But especially with the way quarterback's going, I think that's going to be like my elite quarterback strategy for when I get locked out of guys I like. Like if me and Pete were looking at that team, right? We have Ryan Tannehill, we have Zach Wilson, we went 3 quarterbacks. It sucks. And it's like, if I look at, I'm going to look up our scores real quick on that team just to tell you what we used throughout the year, or maybe I'll do it by the end of the show because it might take a few seconds. But I think one of them was we used like a single digit score one week, which was probably Jalen Hurts's week that he was out on bye. I think it was like a 9-point performance from Zach Wilson or something like that. And then there was like a 20-point performance from Ryan Tannehill. So we're talking like 29 points on a team that we advanced by over 200 points on, right? And now we're in this situation where Jalen Hurts is out, Ryan Tannehill's out, and even if he wasn't, I would like to have Ryan Tannehill, trust me, this week against Houston.
Yes, you'd be feeling a lot better, yeah.
You'd be feeling better, but now we're on Zach Wilson. It's like, okay, we could have just used 2 quarterbacks. We could have used Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew, had an extra lottery dart in our wide receiver or running back or our third tight end if we wanted to. And our team's better overall, and we're not so worried about the quarterback position.
Yep. And I think there's a lot of excellent points in the chat. And to be clear, I don't think, and Rob even said that, like, I don't think it's probably only a couple of guys.
It is.
Minshew just happened to end up being the perfect example because he already was the perfect example. He's maybe the best backup quarterback in the league, give or take, on maybe the best offense in the league, again, give or take. And this situation happened to play out. And so, but these are the things, that this sicko channel is going to dive into, because that's what we do. We're diagnosing any possible. I'm not saying this is an edge. I'm not saying this is anything. I'm not even saying, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I haven't researched it or whatever, but these are the kinds of things that our opponents are going to laugh at and scoff at and say, what are you talking about? Handcuffing your quarterback? Are you an idiot? Like, that's so stupid. And it's like, well, actually, there's a lot of these stupid things. People thought drafting a solo Travis Kelce team was stupid. Yeah, those are my best teams. Solo Travis Kelce teams. They thought they were stupid, right? I know there's people there. I forget who it was, so I apologize. If you're watching or listening in the chat, drafted like a bunch of like solo Josh Allen teams. And they smashed. Like they absolutely smashed. And he's sitting on like a lot of really good Josh Allen BBM teams still alive in the semifinals. And it's like, that's incredible. And other people will be like, what are you doing, dude? You're not going to like, you can't take a single quarterback. What if he gets hurt? What if this, that, whatever? It's like all these things are the things we need to try to talk through and figure out. And so I do think it's interesting with a certain subset of those the starting quarterback, right? So you start with the starting quarterback and then you go to the backup quarterback, and there's probably every year, I don't know, 3 to 5 or something like that.
Exactly.
Like it could make sense for. And so it's a really interesting conversation.
I was on it a little bit in the off season with Huntley, but there was also trade contingent that I was doing that for as well. Like in case he ended up like on some team starting, like I thought it was like a 5% chance that happened. So I preeminently already like thinking about it slightly, but I think this situation just brings it more to life. And it's like, we look at those last 8 to 10 quarterbacks that are going, and it's like, who cares? Who cared about Carson Wentz, right? Who cared about trying to figure out that New Orleans quarterback situation? I mean, the flip side is if you got Seattle right, you're happy with Geno Smith, but and that's going to happen every year too. But like, still, Geno Smith, great. Wish I had him like as a backup to Jalen Hurts. But if it was Minshew instead of Geno Smith, whatever. Who cares at this point? It's like, I'd want Geno against Kansas City, and it's a better offense. I mean, it's not a better offense, but it's a better spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Geno, because I think
he's going to lead into some of the stuff we're going to talk about.
I think what the whole conversation can kind of be, I tagged the one quarterback as a conviction play on RotoGrinders this week for the Saturday slate. It's Geno Smith. So obviously, clearly, I'm excited about who the fuck isn't? Every other game is a monsoon and 30-mile-an-hour winds, and that one's pretty fun. And Tyler Lockett's out, so shout out Olympian Marquise Goodwin, going to be in all my DFS teams this week. It's really nice though when you. It's exactly. Gino, the guy who I thought was going to be the backup quarterback for the worst team in the NFL in the preseason, to his guy who I thought was like his 5th wide receiver. Lock him in. What could against the Super Bowl favorite? No big deal. But the Geno thing, I think, and like the Minshew thing, I don't think we spend enough time on those late round quarterbacks. I started to slowly get there this year. That's where I got to Mariota. And I actually don't really regret Mariota, to be totally honest with you. I knew that the benching thing was a risk. He was a backup to an elite guy, or he was a third on 3 punt guys. And he helped team. He absolutely helped me get teams through. He helped me make more money. And the bet was, he would either just like get to that buy and help me get there, or I mean, dude, I know he was terrible. I know the Falcons are a shit show. Nobody probably really even wants to hear about the Falcons, but they were a couple bounces away throughout the course of this season from like almost running away with that division. They should have beat the Saints early in the year. They should have beat the Rams at the full strength Rams early in the year. They had a pass that like went through somebody's hands to like win that game against the Rams. They could have started 4-0. They could be like the Bucks. The Bucks could be shutting it down right now if the Falcons had won a couple games that they beat the 49ers, dude. Like they're not like this completely totally incompetent team, even though it doesn't really make sense that they're not. And so it was just a bet. Like, what if Mariota keeps the job? Right? Geno was this same thing, more of an upside archetype at the back end. Like, why are you taking Davis Mills? I look at these goddamn Davis Mills teams that I have, and I'm like, I would rather they were Mariota. I would rather they were Minshew. I would rather they were Geno. Like, I think we should spend more time, even if the guy is a high risk to get benched, like Mariota was, or we don't know if he's going to start. That you could say that for Pickett and Trubisky if you wanted to do that, either one of them. Or Geno and Locke, whatever. I know, like Chris Spags, shout out Spags, was on the Locke side of things. That's how it goes sometimes. But I think that bet is a better bet than what we default to safety. And it's like, well, Davis Mills isn't going to get benched. They're tanking. He's a second, right? But like he also isn't going to help you. You would feel better about Gino. You would feel better about Minshew. You would feel better about Gino. I felt better about Mariota all season. You would feel better about, there's a lot of guys back there that you would feel better about. So I just think the late round quarterback thing is going to be really interesting. Quarterback, we've talked about it a bunch, is going to be interesting. But the late round stuff, I think there's still some juice left to squeeze back there.
Yeah, sorry to put us off on that tangent, but it is something that I do think combo. We need to have a conversation about in the offseason, like that type of stuff. But let's talk about Seattle. Let's start talking about the guys we think we do need in week 16. And we were on Sunday night, and the first name that we said was Derrick Henry. But after we got off the show, I was like, oh, I forgot to mention the other name that I'm scared to death of, and that's DK Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is lining up for a smash DK Metcalf spot this week. Like, speaking of guys you might need, he might be the number one wide receiver this week. It's totally viable. They're playing Kansas City. They're one of the decent weather games for the most part.
It's only cold for anyone that needs to know. It's just only cold in Kansas City, so it's not that big of a deal.
I mean, I'm not sure Kansas City can push Seattle to keep this a competitive game. But I mean, seriously, like, what are we looking at here? We're looking at the potential that DK gets hit one of the highest target volumes of his career against a bad secondary in a game that they're going to need to put up points. And as much as I need Kenneth Walker to go off, when I'm doing some DFS this week, just because I'm a sicko and I have enough best ball teams to sweat, but here I go having to, add to that plate. DK Metcalf might be one of my lock buttons, especially because I'm already considering locking Mahomes for all my MME stuff. So I might just be running back DK on every team, and you might be, if you're looking at pods that you have DK Metcalf staring at you, you might be a little scared.
Bad, yeah, good, yeah, tough run out because he's a reasonably low advance rate, not like crazy low, but he's not some super chalk guy. And if you're running into a bunch of DK Metcalf, I brought up for anyone unfamiliar, the basically projections in Lineup HQ, which is the Roto-Grinders DFS kind of version of our Draft IQ tool, right? And I brought it up and sorted by, you see here, I sorted by the projected fantasy points. This is just Saturday, so Sunday is included, but I don't think there's anybody on Sunday. Maybe Tyreek. I think Tyreek would be the only guy that would maybe come in above here.
Mm-hmm.
But when I sort by it's PPR too, but whatever. I sort by fantasy points at wide receiver. Certainly no guy tonight is gonna change this. The third highest raw points projection at wide receiver for this week, DK Metcalf. And he's low owned. Not a lot of people got him through. Just so happens to stumble into Tyler Lockett going out. Now, of course, does that mean it all? Projections are projections. But Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf. They project better than CeeDee Lamb. They project better than Jamar Chase. So like this is like kind of the stuff I'm talking about all the time when I'm constantly saying like, yeah, but like, what is the project? Leverage isn't just leverage. Or leverage isn't just ownership. Leverage is this. We meet in the middle at some point with ownership and projection. You actually could be reasonably owned and still be a leverage play, right? If you project so much better or whatever. That's actually the Travis Kelce. That's what Travis Kelce is this week. So he's not low owned. He's 15% in the second round, but he just projects like literally double every other tight end. He's a high leverage play. DK Metcalf is a high leverage play. He's not 2% owned in the semifinals, but he's not popular enough for the third highest raw points projected wide receiver with probably the highest ceiling, second highest ceiling. He has a higher ceiling than ceiling projection than Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a smash.
Are you seeing Peng's comments in the chat? He has 68% Metcalf left, like on his teams.
I saw him post that on Twitter. That's unreal. What a sick awesome taking a stand on DK Metcalf, and weathering the storm because it was fine, but it wasn't like amazing. Yeah. And then this run out is just like, holy shit, dude. Yeah. This is the dream.
Slightly jealous of that. I mean, I was indifferent on DK Metcalf. Like I liked him.
Same.
I wasn't not taking him, but he wasn't like a guy that I was going out of my way to be overexposed to. If I had been, I would have been fine with it. If I was underexposed, it's kind of the same thing. I don't even remember like what my actual ownership was. It was probably close to 8%, somewhere 10%, maybe something like that. So going, he says he had him on like 50% of teams. That's a hell of a stand. I love to see it. I love people that take stands, right? Like, kudos to you.
I love it.
I don't have much DK left. I don't know if you have any teams left with DK. It wasn't easy to get them here. I think the one I have is on DK. To be honest with you, which you can finally look at your teams again on DK, so that's fun.
We've progressed into you can see your teams.
So that's a good time. I'm glad we got that
confirmed. No Metcalf for me on anything.
Yeah, that stuff. And just to clear up one thing that we said earlier, I don't want to start this conversation again, but that team with Jalen Hurts, Tannehill, Wilson. Jalen Hurts for the season, regular season, not week 15, 320.92 points. Ryan Tannehill, 0.00. Zach Wilson, 27.52.
Oh, 27. Look at him.
Yeah, so I think he did have a game at one point, and
you only would have won by 175 points if you didn't have drafted Zach Wilson.
Right. So, yeah, DK is a guy that I am heavily petrified of, especially if I'm in any of Pang's. He's coming for revenge on me too. I knocked Pang out of the semifinals last year and won on some sort of tournament, and I'm a better player than him, but now he's coming for revenge. So shout out to Pang.
Yeah, Metcalf is definitely one I've mentioned. We've both mentioned the big dog. What do you have any? I don't want to keep talking about the big dog, but do you have any small concerns about him? Like not his ceiling, because we know what he can do, right? But just like maybe the probability he hits a higher percentile outcome this week without Tannehill, right? Malik Willis, like he's bad, dude. The only reason they're playing him is because they don't have any other choice. Vrabel clearly does not like Malik Willis. I guess it's also somebody was tweeting that they might play Josh Dobbs instead of Malik Willis. Like that's how much they hate him, which is kind of crazy. But regardless, they're missing either three or four starting offensive linemen, and then no Tannehill. Burks is still questionable. I don't know. I don't know how real the questionable tag is for him, if it's probable or questionable, but he's questionable. They're just a mess. I know the Texans matchup is awesome. I'm certainly he's not going to score 6 fantasy points, but
they're a defensive-minded head coach too, to your point, and they're missing all these offensive. Yeah, the Derrick Henry thing could be a disaster because they could be just stacking the box. Derrick Henry hasn't looked quite as explosive as he has in the past. He's had it here and there, but he hasn't. I mean, there was a game where like he couldn't break a tackle, if you remember. Like
he hasn't looked very good. To your point.
So yeah, am I still scared of him? He still crushed this team earlier in the year. He still did his 200 points against them, 200 yards against them. So yeah, it's still a viable run out. But I think you bring up a great point that maybe they're just like, we're not going to let Derrick Henry beat us. We're going to stack the box. We're going to put 2 bodies on him at all times. And if Malik Willis can throw for 210 yards and 2 scores to beat us, then so be it.
I've talked about, to move on from Willis' advance rate definitely has to be minuscule. His advance rate out of this round is going to be minuscule too, because you don't get to score fantasy points when all you do is hand the ball off to Derrick Henry.
Do I play him in Scott Fishbowl this week?
Who do you have at quarterback?
I mean, I have Trevor Lawrence tonight, but it's a 2 quarterback thing.
Yeah, right.
So
I mean, you have to play Lawrence. Yeah, you still just have to play Lawrence.
I have to play Lawrence. I had Kyler out. I had Colt McCoy now out. So my 2 quarterbacks are Lawrence and Malik.
What a brutal run out of a really good team.
Yeah.
It happened to me. I had Lamar and Kyler, same thing, and Ramondre, and everything died on that fateful week 14.
Goddamn game.
Yeah.
So
fun year of Scott Fishbowl though.
Hey, I'm still alive. That's all that matters. Still got a chance.
In a chair.
The Derrick Henry thing, it could brust, and I kind of want it to, because I kind of don't have a lot of Derrick Henry teams left. So, I kind of, even for the teams I have Derrick Henry, it's like, I'd rather you not do something. I'd rather avoid that at all cost right now. Do you
I have
think
one and it's Hurts, so I'm like,
yeah,
Texans, please. 9 guys in the box.
stack everybody in the box.
Please.
See if Malik Willis can even throw the football.
Yeah.
Do you think Saquon's not getting talked about enough this week?
I do. I mean, he hasn't popped for the absolutely monster week.
Mm-hmm.
The Vikings are a little bit more vulnerable, through the air than on the ground. But like, he is the fulcrum of the offense. There's going to be points scored in that game. It's in a dome where one of the few games where we don't have to say like, oh, what's the weather looking like? The Giants are playing for their lives. So he's, Breida will play a few snaps when Saquon needs a sip of water. But other than that, he's going to be out there the whole time. He's going to catch passes. They are going to score points. I don't know how Brian Daboll, that dude is like fucking Harry Potter. How does he get this team to keep scoring points on everybody? I will never know. He's throwing to Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger. Like, what? But they score, dude. But Saquon is the fulcrum. And so, like, it hasn't happened. And I think people have forgotten about him. But, dude, he could absolutely have a 180 total yards and 3 touchdown game really at any point. And I don't have any. I have him on a Hurts Kyler team. I think my only Saquon team has Hurts and Kyler, and it's like I lost a CMC Saquon like robust team to the Monday Night Football game, AJ Dillon game, but. So my only Saquon team is dead, and he's a really good one that no one is talking about. But he looks really good this weekend, I think.
I don't remember exactly where it is, but I know I have a Saquon team that I did like, and I bring him up because I listen to a couple of the DFS shows and I see all the tweets and everything, and everyone's super excited about Derrick Henry. We've heard the 200-yard thing ad nauseum all week.
Yeah.
Everyone's pretty excited about Christian McCaffrey this week. So like, the high-priced running backs in terms of DFS that are getting talked about are those two guys. And I think it's made it so that we just forget that one of the games in a good spot in a dome, right? They're in a dome in Minnesota.
Yep.
Saquon's there. He's the crux of the offense, like you said, and no one's talking about him. And so if you got him through to this round, or if you didn't get them through to this round, he might be, a gold star next to him at the end of the week. Like, you probably needed Saquon to advance.
I totally agree. I have some fun. You can stack that Chiefs game. I know this isn't a DFS show, but it is what it is. You can stack that Chiefs game if you use Geno over Mahomes and get 2 of the elite running backs. And my hot take will be, I think Saquon outscores CMC this week, and so I prefer him. I mean, I'm not going to make a hot take about Derrick Henry. It is what it is, but I really do like Saquon. Like, really do like Saquon. So he's a good one if you have Saquon remaining. And I mean, Felix is out here sun running. Guy has the lowest advance rate of all time from drafting 90% Najee, and he's sun running into a Derrick Henry Saquon team in the semifinals. Like, what the fuck, man? How did you find your way into this? I was going to bring up a guy who is really not what you would think of maybe through the lens of some of the guys that we've been talking about all week and today, in terms of like, oh my God, right? DK Metcalf without Tyler Lockett against the Chiefs. This is awesome. I've been talking about Ayuk. I'm not going to bring Ayuk up again. With Saquon, like these early round, just totally nuclear ceiling guys. But a guy who, like, we've talked all year about, like, just like this Kansas City wide receiver shuffle that they've been going on. The one constant has been Juju when healthy. And he feels like the guy where it's like, look, we got to the end of the season. MVS is MVS, right? He's going to kind of do his thing. He's not particularly good. He's out there, so that's okay. Sky has not earned it, not earning any more work. Brought Tony back. Hardman will be back. Hardman I'm definitely excited for, but Hardman isn't going to do like 10 for 120 and 2. Juju caught 10 balls last week. Literally,
Well,
it like went under the radar.
They're also saying Hardman still might not play this week.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can expect either Tony or Sky to play full roles because Justin Watson is still going to play. MVS is obviously going to play his 60 to 80% of snaps somewhere in that ballpark. And then it's obviously, Kelsey, but I think like Juju, man, is going to have 2 good matchups in a row, is going to get close to double digit, if not double digit targets in all these games. And he's kind of I was thinking about it because Ayuk, Metcalf, these guys that fell in this like 4th to 7th round range that was so goddamn awful, right?
Yeah.
Where I took Gabe Davis, where people took Brandon Cooks, where people, if you didn't take a quarterback there, you're shit. And now if you took Jalen Hurts there, you're shit too. It's like, who can come from there? And I think Metcalf is the clearest candidate, but I thought Juju was an interesting guy because it's just like we've been waiting for another Chief to pop, and I just feel like if it's going to be one, it's going to be Juju, and he's definitely earned the most volume too.
Yeah, I was going through this earlier today as I was drafting a gauntlet team, and I drafted Mahomes in the first round, and I wanted to try a little bit of a unique, different build, and I had the same conversation in my head because I went with a Chiefs onslaught. So instead of doing what we normally do for a draft, I took 6 Chiefs, I think. I took Mahomes, Juju, MVS, Hardman, and Kadarius Toney. So I took 5. And then I just like one-offed mostly a lot of NFC teams. And I'm like, I'm just playing for the onslaught. Just like a Super Bowl onslaught where I need all Chiefs and 1 bring back or something like that was the way I went for it. So I was like, maybe they tighten the rotation a little bit because of the playoffs. Right. So maybe we start to see a little bit of that. Also, we got Dial in the chat just absolutely flexing and trying to act like he's not flexing. Where they go, I got a Mahomes team with Henry, Jacobs, and Stevenson. The receivers are a little weak with Debo out, though. I only have Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson. What? The receivers are a little weak? You have 4 studs right there between those 4. I mean, weather and stuff, but God, I'd be fine with that quartet of wide receivers.
You can get 3 good scores out of that wide receiver crew for sure. Yeah. There are worse wide receiver crews in your pod. Yeah. Not just like in all tournaments. In your pod, there are worse wide receiver groups. Another guy. So I'm making the assumption that Deontay Johnson is going to play, but he missed practice today and he's questionable.
Yep.
They have an awesome matchup this week.
Yep.
And George Pickens is the last remaining dude in the wide receiver room, right? Claypool's gone. If Deontay doesn't play and you have George Pickens, he hasn't been able to earn that level of volume when other guys are right. Deontay is just a target earner. It's gross targets, but they can't do much on offense. So we're just going to give Deontay a bunch of 6-yard targets. Pickens hasn't earned that. He's a little more of a downfield flyer. He's the Gabe Davis to the Stephon Diggs, like a really dollar store version of the Gabe and Diggs dynamic in Buffalo. But that's really what he's been. But like, if you remove, he's probably better than Gabe. So if you remove the Diggs part of that equation, and now you have Pickens against one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, he's a really good guy to have. So all of a sudden, this team could turn into like a legit loaded wide receiver room. Like if Garrett Wilson didn't have to deal with weather, you would be set.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that team. Speaking of Deontay Johnson, I thought it was hilarious that he had a wide open path to the end zone earlier on Sunday, and he said, absolutely not, and just started running backwards. Like he's like, I have a reputation to uphold. Yeah, I don't score touchdowns. Like absolutely not.
I gotta go call Jacoby Myers after the game and let him know that bro, we don't score any touchdowns. Miles Sanders, left us in the dust last year. He didn't score any touchdowns. Now he's got 10. So we got to we got to keep the no touchdown thing going on.
I was watching the Red Zone channel and I saw that. I was dying. I was like, how do you not score there? But
he's the worst good football player I think I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like the dumbest smart person. He's the worst good football player I've ever seen in my life.
I'm so glad I didn't draft Deontay Johnson this year. That was a full fade for me.
I have him on 2 DraftKings teams. riddle me this, Batman. I drafted like 3% Deontay Johnson. I draft like 1,000,000% of all these other guys, and I have 2 DK teams out of 12 or whatever left have Deontay Johnson on them.
It's funny how that works out. Like you'll have so much of these guys, and like it's like the one guy you barely drafted. Like, I think I had 6% Derrick Henry. I got a Derrick Henry team through. I have some guys that were lower ownership. It's like, oh, I got him through. I know I accidentally auto draft. Thank God I don't have a Mike Thomas team, Mike from New Orleans, because I literally only auto drafted him this year. I think I had him on 3 teams, and they were all auto drafts. Yeah, thank God, because I'd be like vomiting if I'm like, what value I left on the table by auto drafting that, in that spot.
This is an interesting. What do you think about DJ Moore? Do you think that there's enough up? So to be clear, they get the Lions this week.
Yeah,
the Lions are super fascinating because I have Donta Foreman on some teams, and all year I would have said, dude, 18th round Donta Foreman against the Lions sounds pretty good. In week 16, but they have just been shutting down the run. No one can run on them anymore. They're like the goddamn old school Bucks, the old Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh Bucks that like 14 carries for 15 yards every week that they gave up. The Lions are doing that. Like Dalvin had 15 carries for 15 yards or whatever it was. Like no one can run on them, but the pass defense is bad, is real bad. And so now the Carolina pass offense is really horrible, but DJ Moore is really good. So he's kind of like maybe another guy in that he went close enough to that, Metcalf range or something that maybe you could get a guy out of there that's helpful, that hasn't really been that helpful this year.
Yeah, another guy that you drafted so early, like you said, that his advance rate is probably low. I haven't checked on him specifically.
I can tell you, I got it up.
I'm sure it's low. And I think, it's a holiday week. The DFS stuff, there's a correlation between the DFS stuff and this week because it is now a 1-week tournament, and I think DJ Moore is getting overlooked this week as of right now. Maybe tomorrow things change and everyone gets on DJ Moore, but I've only heard his name a handful of times here and there. So I think he's going to be a guy that I would like to have on some of my teams.
I think so. 9%. That's pretty good. Definitely going to be low owned. Even if he has a good week this week, when you're just not that popular in the semis, it's very hard for you to be too popular in the final round. So I like DJ Moore.
I'm right on track with that too, because I have 11% of him on 18 of my 25 teams, just the one I can look up real quick. So
that's nice.
Yeah, it adds up. I mean, what's that? 2 teams maybe with DJ
2 teams. Yeah, 2 teams.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about these Philly wideouts this week?
Good question. I was going to ask about the Bills wideouts. I think that they're both kind of, for very different reasons, similar. One is a quarterback change. The other is kind of some underperformance, some bad weather or whatever. But like, how are you like for the Eagles? I guess I should answer your question first. For the Eagles, I don't really feel like I'm lowering their projection on my end very much for AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. But now their projection comes down because Goddard came back. So that's a thing that people aren't really even considering, I don't think. The fact that Goddard's a pretty good target earner, and there's only so many, passes to go around. So it's a little downgrade, but it's mostly because of Goddard. I think Hurts unlocks a ceiling for those wide receivers because it made me sick watching him throw all these incompletions, but he just chucks the ball down the field, dude. When he gets AJ Brown or Devonta Smith in one-on-one on the outside, he is more than willing to just say, you guys are good. I'm going to give you a shot and throw it out there. Maybe Minshew does that too, but we just don't know. And that's really not been Minshew's game. He's kind of been more on the people look at him as like this wild man because he acts like it and dresses like it. But he's really been more of like a Jimmy G style quarterback in terms of how he plays the position. And so, but that doesn't really like change my expectation for them like at a median perspective. But I do think you remove a little bit of some hero ball from Hurts to AJ Brown, right? The 70-yard touchdowns are probably a little bit lower probability, but I still feel good. I don't really feel, normally, right, if you lost Mahomes for someone, you'd be like, fuck me, this is over, right? If you lost Josh Allen for Diggs, you're like, that's it. I don't really feel that way about the Eagles, but so I'll let you also answer the Eagles, but then I want to hear what you think about the Bills. Is it just like a bad stretch, but they have bad weather too? I'm curious about them.
Well, I think like you bring up the comparison between the two, and it's almost like the mirror image or the Superman and Bizarro, because the Eagles advance rate on the wide receivers is high. We just saw that AJ Brown, third highest advance rate player in there. Stephon Diggs is real low. I don't know what Gabe Davis is, but I know the Stephon Diggs advancement is pretty low on that. So yeah, I'm not super worried about the Eagles wide receivers. 1% on Gabe Davis.
10.
Sorry. 10% on Gabe Davis.
Diggs is
and
lower.
I think Diggs is lower.
Diggs is lower. 8.
Yeah. Diggs is at 8%. Versus the 20-something% we saw on AJ Brown.
Right. AJ Brown's the third highest owned player. Not wide receiver, the third highest owned player. And Devonta's top 10, I think.
Yeah.
17.
Yeah. So like the juxtaposition between the two is massive, right? You're looking at two of the best advance rate players in the Eagles, who I think are going to be fine. But I think I told you on Sunday, the Best Ball Mania team I'm most excited about that's live is a Josh Allen double stack with Diggs and Gabe Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Because we start looking at these ownership numbers, we see that they're low. They're cut in half to the people on top. And now you put that together with who has Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, and Stephon Diggs still alive. Can't be many of us in Best Ball Mania is what I would say. There's got to be only a select few of us. There's only a few of us that are strong enough to bear that cross or that burden, and I'm one of them, but here we are. So I'm really hoping I can sneak that team through. Like, of my 4 BBM teams, I think 2 are Mahomes, and I would love to win it with Mahomes for the brand, like just getting the Mahomes team through. But if I'm being completely honest, the team that I think is the most fun to get through is the Josh Allen double stack with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. And I'm not fully worried about him. Stephon Diggs I think he's my favorite NFL player, to be perfectly honest.
So good. Also, he has when he did the I'm him on the sideline right into the camera, that's one of the best moments of the entire NFL season. I mean, it's on their commercials and shit now. Like, he's a legend. He's absolutely amazing. And I think him and Devontae, also, this is similar to kind of what you were talking about with like Zach Wilson and Lawrence and stuff, but coping. But my some of my most important teams have these two guys on it. And if you would have said a week ago that Davante Adams is going to be 6%, Davante Adams was I believe he either had like the same advance rate or higher. I guess we might be able to see it on here. Okay. So advance from round 1, 26% of Davante Adams teams advanced from round 1. So look at Justin Jefferson, who is now, that first round wide receiver that is at 23% in the semifinals. He was also 26%. So Davante Adams was basically, talk about the guy you need in the regular season. It was him and Justin Jefferson as the first round wide receivers. I think their advance rate was higher than Travis Kelce. Now, of course, there's a little bit of flukiness to advance or whatever, but okay, Kelce was a little bit higher. But right there with Travis Kelce was Davante Adams. Mm-hmm. Now he is 6% in BBM. All the Davante teams died. Right now, I'm mainly talking about one DraftKings team that has him and Diggs, but I'm like looking at that team like, dude, all the Diggs and Davante teams got wiped out by Jefferson and CMC and Kelce and Derrick Henry and whatever. And now I got these two superstars into the semifinals at no ownership. I might be the only person in my pod with them. Like, that feels pretty good. Both Diggs and Davante. I'm a little more excited for Diggs, but that's just like Bills love. That I can't get excited about Derek Carr.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so weird, like the way the different tournaments work too, because you see that advance rate on BBM, and then I look at my big dog pod, and there's 3 out of 8 teams with Davante Adams, and it's just like crazy. It's like he didn't do much, but that shows you that the different tournaments are going to advance different players based on allowing a smaller pod with 2 players advancing and stuff like that. But
I told you, again, I have 4 BBM teams left. One is totally dead because it has Hurts and Kyler. One has Hurts and Tua, so it's okay. It's mostly dead. I have 2 teams that I think are alive: a Mahomes team and then a Kirk and Tua team. The Kirk and Tua team there's only 2 Jalen Hurts teams in the pod. There are more Lamar Jackson teams than Hurts teams in that pod. So like it kind of worked out because Lamar's not playing, so it was like net it was totally fine. Mm-hmm. But then in the other pod there is not a Lamar team, and there's 8 Hurts teams.
Yeah.
In the it's bizarro. There's like 5 Lamar teams in this one pod. It's like, God damn, I have all the fucking Lamar Jackson semifinals teams in this one, which looked bad if he was going to play, but now it looks fine. And it's just, again, that's just, it is what it is. It's pod variance, but it's funny when you see it in real time, kind of like your big dog thing. You have all the league winners on the team, and nobody else has them.
No one has them, and that's why I'm still excited about it though. Like it feels like it gives me a chance. No one has Ramondre, no one has Kenneth Walker, no one has Josh Jacobs. No one has Josh Jacobs this week, and he's playing Pittsburgh, and he's real live to be the best running back on the entire week. Right. I was going to say slate, but he's playing, I think, the Saturday night game.
Right.
So he's not even on like a slate in terms of like DFS is where my brain goes. But yeah, he has a chance to be the best scoring running back on the entire thing. And his advance rate was low for a guy that got you there in Best Ball Mania.
Oh, yeah.
He was lower than the field.
Let me look. 14%.
Yeah.
Down from almost 50 to 14 in the blink of an eye.
Yeah. And you're going to see people drop. I mean, that's just the way it works, but that's a big drop off. And you got rid of a ton of Josh Jacobs teams in the first round of the playoffs. So if you have Josh Jacobs, you're still happy about that. It's not going to be over-owned unless you draw the pod that everyone got Josh Jacobs. I'm sure it happens. Like we said, you have the Jalen Hurts pod, right? Yeah,
I have a Jalen Hurts pod and a Lamar Jackson pod. So maybe I'm sun running. I guess I shouldn't complain.
And maybe we didn't talk about him enough too. Maybe Josh Jacobs is the guy you need this week. For a guy that you needed for the majority of the season, he has one bad game, and we forget that Josh Jacobs is a thing again, right? So maybe we're looking at Josh Jacobs for the player that you need this week against Pittsburgh.
To add to that, a very similar guy to kind of piggyback and put a bow on it, Ken Walker, if he plays, now he's questionable, but he's expected to play. Same thing, league winner all year. How many? He has about as many 30-point games as Josh Jacobs does. He definitely has more long runs than Josh Jacobs does. He's grown into more of a pass catching role, and they're playing the Chiefs. Like, we know you can run on the Chiefs. Ken Walker can probably run on anybody. And if he's going to, we saw the last time we saw him, he was catching passes in a negative game script. It's like, and now we've forgotten about him. Like, he's kind of like a smash. He's on 10. He's only 10%. He's only, I know you need him and Josh Jacobs and all these guys who we thought would be like, God damn it. If Ken Walker goes off, I'm dust because he's going to be so chalky. It's like, no, they're not chalky. Zay fucking Jones, KJ Osborne is higher owned than these guys. Like, it's just crazy. The ownership in this round is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And you know what's going to happen? Leonard Fournette scoring 2 touchdowns against Arizona.
God, no. Please no.
And he's going to break the slate, and you're going to see all these Fournette teams advance to the finals, and you're just going to be like...
That would be fun. If I get there and there's a bunch of Fournette teams, I'm totally okay with that happening.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. Any other people that we forgot? I mean, Kelsey feels like he could be one. It seems like he advanced lower than expected. I'm sure there's still Kelsey teams out there for sure, but he could be the tight. I mean, clearly he could be the tight end. It's not rocket science to figure that out. That could just bury you. Not many other guys out there that can do that. I don't know. It seems like we kind of hit on the majority.
And we've hit a lot of them, so I don't want to repeat too much. I'm just going to throw some random names out while I'm scrolling through some teams. Both Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert, I think, are pretty good leverage. I think also we could dream up I'm not saying it's real. We could dream up a scenario where they benefit the most from Dallas or from Gardner Minshew being in there, right? Maybe let's run the ball a little bit more. If we're not throwing the ball down the field quite as much, maybe it's Dallas Goedert instead of the long bombs to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. I think they are super interesting. And then not so much this week because it's a really shitty matchup this week, but the Falcons running backs, Algier and CPAT. Algier's getting the hype, and I think he should get the most hype because he's really kind of, I think, ascending. But CPAT too, like if you have CPAT on a team, it's basically a split right down the middle between the two of them. It's just Algier maybe he's a little better. We'll see. But they don't have a great matchup this week with Baltimore. And so hopefully you don't have to count on their score this week, but next week is Arizona. And if it's a Trace McSorley Arizona Cardinals team that's out of the playoffs, like you may not see JJ Watt, you may not see any of the good Cardinals. And so they could run all over Arizona and could be really good guys for week 17. So those are just a couple of guys that jumped out to me.
I can't believe how, like, I talked about that Josh Allen team that I have with a double stack. That team's heavily invested in Atlanta, and I wasn't big on Atlanta in the offseason, but it's got Algier and it's got Drake London on it.
Nice.
So those
he's
are
fine. He's totally fine to have too.
Yeah.
He's
so
all the targets, like all of them.
I'll run through the notable players on this team just since I brought it up a few times. So it's Josh Allen because it's got Matt Ryan, who's dead. It's Miles Sanders, Tony Pollard, Ramondre, Tyler Algier, Khalil Herbert.
Another interesting one. Herbert's interesting.
Yep. Diggs, Waddle, Gabe Davis, Devonta Smith, Drake London, Sky Moore, Josh Palmer, and then George Kittle, Mo Alley Cox. So it's solid enough everywhere that it could advance. And I think that is my most fun team that's left.
Yeah, if Kittle comes in and dunks on everybody, that'll be so funny. It'd be there's a lot of these, right? The KJ Osborne week, the McKinnon ascending at the end of the week. Like if Kittle has his worst season ever and then just dunks on everybody in the fantasy playoffs, it'll be like such a fun conversation for 6 months about like, should we draft this guy, this elite tight end just because he's got the, I mean, theoretically that was part of the conversation was Kittle always had this upside in the playoffs. No, he's got to do it 2 more times, but like, it'll be crazy. Waller caught a touchdown last week too. It's like, these guys they were legitimately bad picks. They didn't do anything all season, Kittle and Waller and Andrews, frankly, for most of the season. But all it takes is these 3 weeks, right? Like Russell Gage, the Russell Gage of tight ends does nothing and boom, 25-point game in the first round of the playoffs.
Unbelievable that the Russell Gage, contingent get there on that game. Who was the other one that got there last week where we were just like breaking computers like we're Bret Hart in that gif? Who else went off last week that I was like, how?
I can't believe I can't remember.
I'm blanking on it, but I remember I was getting really angry Sunday night. Like, how do we allow this?
It was a bunch though. It was tons. Yeah. Last week was just, obviously Zay was a good pick all season, and McKinnon was like fine, but so much of the entire season, these dudes. AJ Dillon. It was AJ Dillon. 100%.
Oh yeah, it was AJ Dillon for sure.
Worst 6th round pick in the history of mankind, and dropped a like 25 ball on everybody. Knocks like 3 of my teams out in the semifinals. Like, what the fuck? How did you even get to the playoffs with this loser? He scored like 4 fantasy points a game.
Yeah, and he's just knocking out BBM teams left and right, and then Aaron Jones isn't getting there enough because of it. So the 2 Aaron Jones teams I want to get through, I'm not going to do this rant again, but come on. You do the right thing and you don't get rewarded for it sometimes, and unfortunately that's life, but it really hurts.
He had a 14% advance rate. AJ Dillon had a 14% advance rate like in the regular season. He's at 12 now, but he had a 14% advance rate. That's wild to me.
Well, I mean,
I never would have. He just got like just on 0 RB bro teams that like have Josh Jacobs, Ramondre, Ken Walker. Yeah,
that had to be what it was. Like he had to be part of that draft structure. I just didn't touch him, like barely at all. Just didn't like the price, and he just gets there week 15, and we cry about it. And
he's on my DraftKings the 333 single entry team.
He's
on that team. He's the only team I have left with AJ Dillon. Like the team I keep saying I'm sweating.
He's on my only live DK team. He's on my only Mahomes DK team.
So funny. Who
is only stacked with Pacheco. Like, I got blocked out of everybody on the Chiefs on that one.
That's great.
So yeah, good times. I think we've hit on the majority of people, though.
I think so
too. We've gotten
ourselves
ready. We know what we're looking for. We know what we're scared of. We got week 16 starting in an hour and a half with the matchup of the century, the New York Jets, who play in New Jersey, so they're not even really the New York Jets, against the Jacksonville Jaguars in a monsoon. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Clash of the Titans. We are ready.
It is the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick in the draft. I'm surprised that Amazon or whoever isn't pitching it that way, like the clash of the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick. You know, it's like, how else do you sell Zach Wilson in a monsoon on prime time to get people to watch? Like, I don't know, but
how amped is Al Michaels going to be tonight? He's been so excited all year, and now he gets this game in a monsoon. He's going to be thrilled.
No chance he's sober. No chance he's sober. I don't know what his fun preferences are, but I mean, he's not going to make it through this game. To wrap, as we do on multiple shows and as I do on all the DFS shows that we do, since we're talking about week 16 and, some of the guys we think you might need or whatever, who is, if you had to pick one player, or it could be a stack, right? One situation or one player that you're like, this is the guy that's going to carry teams through in week 16. Who is it?
I don't know. My head goes to Zach Wilson with, I'm just kidding. No, no, it's got, I think it might be Barkley or DK Metcalf. Like, those are the two ones that just kind of stick out to me. I know everyone's on Derrick Henry and it makes sense, right? I get it, but Barkley at a low advance rate, I think you can just bury the field if he has his explosion game this week. And I think it's very viable in Minnesota in the Dome. We've talked about what this week's going to be, how low the totals are for everything. Everyone's overlooking Barkley. Not that you can change anything in best ball, but it feels like Barkley is going to be that obvious call. You know how there's usually that obvious call at the end of the week that somebody went low owned in DFS and you were like, how are we off on this? How do we forget about this guy?
Happens every week. Yep.
Every week it happens. And it feels like Saquon might be the guy. I have that gut feeling. And DK, I know he's getting hyped a little bit, but DK feels like he could just windmill dunk on us in the end zone 2 or 3 times in that Kansas City matchup.
I think that not just because they're both the most intimidating human beings on the field, but Derrick Henry and DK Metcalf are the 2 chalk answers, right? That Derrick Henry against the Texans, DK Metcalf without Tyler Lockett against the Chiefs. They both probably bench press, the 2. I'm in the left arm and you're in the right arm. These dudes are mutants out there on the field. So it's easy to get excited about them. And you should be excited about them. I like the Saquon call. I kind of think this is a little bit similar to the Saquon thing, but I've mentioned him on every show. I'm not going to back down now. If we're going to call a conviction play, let's fucking have some stones and call it a conviction play. But it's Brandon Ayuk for me. I think that he's kind of similar to that Saquon thing. Obviously, his is more the fact that Debo is gone. But if you would have said we're heading into week 16, Brandon Ayuk does not have Debo Samuel there. He maybe has a quarterback upgrade. I don't know. An upgrade from Lance probably. Whether it's an upgrade from Jimmy G, I don't know. The offense is unreal because they have CMC and Kittle, but he had a down week last week. The outside wide receivers have actually been bad against Seattle. Tariq Woolen or whatever, the rookie corner is just, Sauce gets all the hype, but Woolen is just dominating souls on the outside. And that's where Ayuk was most of the time. So guess what? Kittle and CMC smashed. Now he gets Washington, who is probably going to slow down CMC, relatively speaking. No one really slows down CMC, but their front seven is where they win with Washington. And it's like Debo's gone. Maybe Kittle, right? They love to use Kittle to block. CMC gets slowed down a little bit. Who is going to pop off? Because they're going to score. It's a pass funnel. I just think everybody's not even like, again, for DFS, not even like thinking about Brandon Ayuk. And like, if Ayuk went off last week, everybody would be saying like, oh my God, there's no Debo, Brandon Ayuk, right? Because like, just like we're talking about Kittle and CMC, but it was just a 1 week thing that those guys happened to go off. There's nothing that says that Brandon Ayuk isn't the best benefactor of no Debo. And so Ayuk, add Ayuk to the list of Saquon. You can't get all these guys on a team. Close, I guess, technically. Saquon at the 2-3 turn, but you get your CMCs and Saquons and Ayuks and Metcalfs and Derrick Henrys and all that on a team. And my God, you're feeling really good heading into this week. I think it's a polarizing week to kind of wrap it up, that all the weather and everything is making it like there's going to be a handful of guys that really do pop off. And like last week, there was a bunch of 30-point performances. I don't think that's going to happen this week. And so you get that guy you need on the team, right? Brandon Ayuk does go for 30. Saquon does go for 30. That can put you in week 17, like, almost by itself.
I completely agree. I'm looking at this comment from Johnny. He's saying that there's less wind than originally projected as of now in New Jersey. And do you remember the last rain game for the Jets? I know it was Mike White, I believe, but they popped off. I think it was Jets Bears, if I recall, a couple weeks back. And everyone was like, it's not going to score much. And that game just went ham, right? Like they just scored a bunch of points that game. They went nuts. And again, maybe we get it tonight. Maybe we get it one more time. We don't know. I mean, it'd be fun if the Jags can put up some points against the Jets, and the Jets can counter. And
please, Trevor, please, my dogs. Think about my dogs.
Think about all our dogs. Think about my 33% advance rate with you. I believed in you, Trevor.
There's three dogs. It's snowing here. I can't get to the store. They need to eat. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we need Amazon. We need you to deliver our food after you win this game. Please. Fly over in a helicopter, drop off bags of money. Because we believed in you, Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly.
And I've believed in you for 12 hours, Zach Wilson, which is more than anyone's ever believed in you. So,
except literally me. I'm the only person on the planet. Me and Felix. Shout out Felix. I did say this. I screwed up on the show yesterday because we get into the grind and I forget that the Christmas weekend schedule. What we're gonna do, we've been doing, Rob and I, kind of like live sweat/tilt shows on Sundays after the afternoon games. Obviously, Sunday is Christmas. Neither of the two of us are going to be, broadcasting from our parents' house or family's Christmas or whatever to talk about this. We love you guys.
Well, but I'm doing the Roto Grinder show in the afternoon.
Well, so Rob, maybe Rob will do it then. But we don't plan to do the live tilt show on Sunday, but we will do it on Monday. Kind of similar to this, heading into the Monday night football game, right? We got Chargers, Colts on Monday night. That has a little bit of ramifications, but not a ton. So we can kind of talk through the Week 16 results and some of mostly Chargers probably love that some people will need, and get ready for the championship week. Anything I missed?
And that's going to be a game to sweat because Chargers are going to be live to make things change. Maybe not so much on the Colts side, but you might have some one-offs like Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman that are getting through. And if they do anything, they could push the team. Pierce
is a good one. I have Zach Moss on a pretty good zero RB team, and so it's a Mahomes Kelsey zero RB team that could be relying upon old Zach Moss on Monday night. So that would be a I don't know if it'd be worse than the sweat tonight of please God, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson give me 18 points, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. So there's going to be, things that we're sweating against and sweating for on that night. We're going to be stressed out AF talking about what we know is advanced, what we're sweating, what died that we thought was going to get through. It's going to be time to come together to celebrate, to mourn, and get ready for week 17.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm excited for the game tonight. I'm excited for all the games this weekend. And everyone, of course, have a wonderful holiday weekend. And the two of us will see you on Monday with the sicko best ball talk, getting ready for week 17. See ya.